And Richard, can you turn your cameras off, please? Thank you.
Cameras off. How do I do that, love?
Switch off.
Oh, there. I'm with you. Turn or off. Is that better?
That's absolutely fine. I just see a black screen.
What's the red thing?
All right.
That's
Good evening, everybody. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Harborne Ward Forum. My name is Jayne Francis. I'm the Labour Councillor for Harborne, Cabinet Member for Education, Skills and Culture, and I'm chairing this evening's meeting. We have people who will be joining us undoubtedly throughout the meeting. Can I remind people that residents listening to the online meeting, that a recording of the meeting will be made available at a later date on YouTube. So can I ask that for the duration of the meeting that you keep your camera switched off, because it helps with the system. If you have any questions on particular items that we're going to hear this evening, can you post questions in the chat function, and we will either try and get them
as soon as I start that muted.
Responded to as the meeting progresses, or get back to you as soon as we can. Okay, with that in mind, item three. Item 3 is a short 10-minute item on community asset transfer. And I'm very pleased this evening to be joined by Karen Cheney, who's head of Neighbourhood Development Support Unit, who's going to talk us through what this actually means. Thank you. Karen.
Hi, I think everybody can see me now. I think I should be on the screen. Good evening. I'm going to have a presentation that one of my colleagues is going to put up on the screen in a minute. So I just wanted to let people know around community asset transfer generally is around the transfer of land or buildings from the city council's ownership to community membership. Thanks, Neil. Could you go on to the next slide? Thank you. It's just a bit of an introduction that there are risks, and it's really important that we do mention that there are risks, but these can be minimised and managed, and there's plenty of experience to draw on across Birmingham. And the main secret and the big issue is about all parties working together. Thanks, Neil. I'm just going to cover not all of this, but some of this, about a bit of background to community asset transfer in Birmingham since 2008, what CAT actually means, and how we do it in Birmingham. Next one. So background to community asset transfer. In Birmingham, there have always been leases in the city council, but it's a long time ago now. Both the Cllr report in 2007 and the Localism Act in 2011 introduced community rights, one of which was about the managing of community buildings. So in Birmingham, we set about to revise what we called a protocol and new ways of working, which was approved in 2011 to ensure that we had something that was corporate and was done in the same way across all service directorates, and it is still in place. We've also put in some lessons learned from when we ran a development programme. Since that date, there've now been over, it's probably 30 successful CATs since I originally wrote this. And it's even more relevant now because it fits very much into the working together in Birmingham's neighbourhoods document, which came out in 2019, which is how the City Council will work better together with community organisations in their neighbourhoods. Thanks, Neil. Ignore that one. That was when it was training. So in Birmingham, what does community asset transfer mean? So because a lot of people misunderstand. So it's really clear. This is to make it really clear. So CAT isn't an automatic right on any piece of land or building that the city owns, but is based on individual business cases within the council. But it is acknowledged, and we must as a council be very clear about which buildings are available and which are not available. It does include buildings and land. And in Birmingham, we made the decision for it to be leasehold, not freehold. And the reason for that is it is a bit of a safety net for both the local authority and the community organisation. If a community organisation takes on a building and then feels it's no longer able to manage it, it does mean that it is secured in the public domain and can come back to the city council. So that's why it was made up to leasehold, and most local authorities across the country actually do at leasehold, and it is generally a fully repairing lease. It is done on economic rent, so whatever the rent is worked out for that building, but it's offset by something called valuing worth. So we don't offer peppercorn rents, but it's a qualitative measure. So it means that the value of the work that a local organisation is going to be doing and the added value to the city council's delivery plan are taken into account and is a cash value, and that offsets the economic rent. It also means that the city council values what the community organisation is doing, because you've got a cash figure. And many of the organisations who've had community asset transfers from the city actually use that value when they apply for external funding to say the city council values us to this amount. CATs are only to bona fide not-for-profit community organisations rather than businesses, and that is generally defined as one which uses its surplus revenues to realise its social goals rather than distributing them as profit. And there's usually something that's called an asset lock within their constitution or their documents. And it must have clearly stated social goals and focus on community benefit. We're not into transferring community assets for private businesses. And from March 2011, which is now a decade ago, which is amazing, CAT should be a consistent qualitative process across the city council. So whichever service area it is, whether it's education, neighbourhoods, social services, it should be exactly the same process that's gone through with a community organisation. Next one, Neil. So how do we do it in Birmingham? Well, we have a property and assets board, and all council assets are viewed, and a decision is made whether that property or land is available for CAT. It's advertised in appropriate places, and we have something that's called an expression of interest that community organisations fill in, and then generally they would have to do an outline business case. We often have open mornings and information sessions so you can view the site and ask any questions over that site. And then there's an assessment and shortlist of expressions of interest groups. We interview those shortlisted organisations and we select what's called a preferred community partner. Now, the only time that's different is if there's already an existing tenant in a building who is seeking a community asset transfer and they are given a priority interview. They still are interviewed because we need to ensure that we want community organisations to succeed and that they fit into the criteria for that building. So we have a preferred community partner. That organisation would then have a lead contact officer from whichever service area it is to manage the project through. That group would then have a heads of terms of a CAT lease. once they've produced a final business case and the value and the valuing worth, and the report is signed off. So in essence, the difference with a community asset transfer lease as opposed to an ordinary lease is that the economic rent is offset by what you say you're going to do, i.e. the valuing worth, and that information is actually attached into the lease. So that's why you have a reduced rent for the building. In fact, all of the asset transfers that we've done so far work out to zero, so no rent is paid. But for that priority, it is written into the lease and then is reviewed on a regular basis. Thanks, Neil. So in theory, there is a generic cat lease that has been evolved. However, each one is slightly tweaked to fit the bill. As I've mentioned, the completing valuing worth and the obligations are then written into that lease. It is usually a full repairing lease. The one area where we have done something slightly different is heritage assets. Because we know there are repairs and alteration clauses which might need the special care in managing that building, we do take that into consideration. And then the other thing is, this is about developing that long-term relationship between the community organisation and the city council. So there is an ongoing assessment of the organisation and the community asset transfer lease, with a rent review every 5 years. So if you like, we do a very quick look at whether the valuing worth is the same and whether that makes any adjustments to any rent that there might be. Next one. So the valuing worth, which I mentioned, this is a bespoke toolkit that we developed in Birmingham to measure the social value of an organisation and the impact of the asset transfer. It values and measures the activity of the organisation, which perhaps were not valued or undervalued previously, and it does give a final pounds, shillings and pence figure. It offsets the rent, and it is a qualitative process. It's undertaken by the organisation, but it's guided by the BCC contact officer. However, whatever's put down, the community organisation needs to provide evidence of what has been put down. It's not a perfect tool, and I don't think we'd ever say it was, but it does emphasise the need to take into account that valuable contribution for community organisations and the tangible worth in the delivery of desired outcomes in the neighbourhoods where that building is. Thanks, Neil. Hints and tips. Be really honest if you're looking at wanting to to manage a building. Why do you want it? It's not an easy option or a panacea for everything, and it is about viability, not liability. You have to recognise that you become, rather than a deliverer of whatever service, advice, and what you're passionate about. If you take on a building, there's no doubt you become a bit of a caretaker as well. So do you actually need your own building, or can you do your activities in a building that's already there? And we're really keen not to set community organisations up to fail. Be very aware, CAT is not resource neutral for either side, whether it's time, capacity and finance, and to take into account legal costs. As it currently stands, and as a community organisation, you have to pay your own legal costs, but you also have to pay the City Council's legal costs. Get as much advice as you possibly can on governance and funding, and how to go about running a building, and do lots of independent research and ask lots and lots of questions We do have now about a bank of just under 30 community organisations who've gone through the process, and we always say, go and speak to them, go and see what worked, what didn't work. How long do things take? It takes a lot longer than you think it's going to. Go get independent surveillance done, etc. Find friends, be it peer-to-peer support or national organisations that can help. The main ones are Locality, which is down on the information, and Birmingham Community Matters, which is a fantastic local peer-to-peer organisation. It is a fantastic opportunity, and there are huge community benefits as long as you take everything into consideration. Next, Neil. Just to add, because people get confused, there is also something called Assets of Community Value, which is part of the Localism Act, which I mentioned before, comes under the community right to bid. And this is the right for voluntary or community bodies to request that a local asset, be it land or a building, be listed as an asset of community value. It covers both public and private assets. So it could be local pubs, libraries, community centres, playing fields, shops, even football clubs. Believe it or not, I think both Birmingham City and Aston Villa have people have applied for them to be put down as assets of community value. It is the responsibility of the local authority to keep the list of those assets of community value, and that we organise the scheme operation, and if there is any requirement for compensation to the owner. Who can nominate? Parish councils or any community organisations with a local connection. You do have to say what the local connection is, and I think in Harborne we have the experience of around the royalty, who local people put in for an asset of community value for there. Nominations come through the NDSU at birmingham.gov.uk. BCC have a decision-making panel. Next one, Neil. If it's agreed, the local authority notify the owner and place the asset on an ACV list. And that list stays there for 5 years. If it isn't agreed, then it's placed on a list of nominated assets, but it's not actually listed. The beauty for listing, and it gives communities the right to show which buildings they feel are important in their area. If the owner of the asset, be it public or private, decides to dispose of that asset, it gives a 6-month moratorium for community organisations to have, they don't have the right of first refusal, but it gives them the ability to perhaps buy the asset on the open market. So that's a quick run through. Thanks, Neil. Thanks very much. But I don't know whether there are any questions on anything that I've said so far, because I think this was a general presentation rather than any specific buildings that people had in mind within the ward.
That's right, Karen. Thank you. That's really helpful, really interesting. There aren't any questions or comments in the chat. It may well be that people go away and do some thinking about this and see how it links with other strategic initiatives in the ward. But it was very useful to get an overview. Thank you very much for making the time to come and join us this evening.
Brilliant. I'll put my email address in the chat box, so if people do want to send me any questions after the meeting and once they've received the presentation, had a think about it, then I'm more than happy to answer those questions.
That's excellent.
Whenever.
Thank you very much, Karen.
Thank you.
Okay, I don't know whether Karen's going to continue to stay with the meeting, but huge thanks for her input this evening. The next item on the agenda, it's another 10 minutes. I'm pleased to welcome this evening Neil de Costa, who's going to talk us through the Community Infrastructure Levy Fund. Never let me said that we don't make things exciting for our Harborne residents on a Monday evening. And Neil's going to talk us basically through how it works and what the benefits are Again, as with the previous presentation, any questions or comments, put them in the chat box and we'll get them fed back. Thank you very much, Neil.
You're very welcome, Councillor Francis. Hopefully everybody can see me, and I'd like first of all to thank you for the opportunity to come and provide an update at Harborne Ward Forum. Now, what I'd like to do first of all is just to put up a slide which will hopefully aid my presentation to you this evening. Just bear with me.
Yep, we've got it.
Fantastic. Right, so I work in Birmingham City Council within Karen's team, actually. It's called the Neighbourhood Development and Support Unit, and one of my roles has been to work with a colleague from Planning and Development around the administration of the Community Infrastructure Levy. So what I'd like to do is just to give you a bit of an overview of the Community Infrastructure Levy, and just to talk a little bit about how it relates to your ward. So Community Infrastructure Levy, the local element, is a 15% allocation that wards receive from local developments. So that the amount that has been allocated for Harborne Ward, which is £127,749, which is quite a lot of money, is obviously linked to some of the developments that have been taking place within Harborne Ward. Now, up until last year, the council didn't have a mechanism by which to administer the Community Infrastructure Levy that was available within, at the moment, it's 11 wards across Birmingham. So what happened was that Planning and Development, along with myself as part of the Neighbourhood Development and Support Unit, linked to the Working Together in Birmingham's Neighbourhoods Fund strategy that Karen mentioned before, we sought to engage with councillors about the best way that Community Infrastructure Levy could be administered. There isn't any strict criteria at the moment in regards to how it is administered, but because of the policy that we've got in place within Birmingham, it's really important that the allocations need to be linked to ward priorities. What was agreed with councillors is that to maximise the funding that's available within wards, we would seek to work with or recruit a crowdfunder, a civic crowdfunding organisation to maximise the amount of money. What that has meant is that we have to go through a procurement process by which a civic crowdfunder will need to be recruited, and that has followed a report that went to committee last December it was. So in terms of Harborne Ward, where we are at the present moment in time, the procurement process is underway in regards to recruiting the crowdfunder. I mentioned the amount of funding that's potentially going to be available within Harborne Ward. Now, in terms of the crowdfunder, some of the kind of figures that have been suggested in terms of linking your available funding to crowdfunding campaigns linked to your priorities, it could mean that for every £1 invested, it could be a £4 return. And, you know, there are figures and there are projects, and lots of other authorities have linked some of their funding to crowdfunding initiatives that have got them really good returns to maximise their funding allocations. Now, for Community Infrastructure Levy for your ward, once we successfully recruit a crowdfunding organisation to work with wards that are in receipt of Community Infrastructure Levy, we are aiming to launch a campaign in the autumn of this year. So, you know, the year's moving pretty quickly at the present moment in time. So we're hopeful that once the procurement process has taken place and we successfully recruit a crowdfunder, they will be working with us as in Birmingham City Council appropriate officers, and also with ward councillors, and also residents and stakeholders in regards to a campaign linked to your priorities within your ward. So in terms of action that needs to happen within the ward, you have a ward plan, which is absolutely fantastic. The only thing that I will say in regards to your ward plan is that ward plans are working documents. So COVID-19 has impacted greatly right across Birmingham, sadly. And in terms of how organisations, how elected members, how we as officers and stakeholders, etc., have had to adapt to COVID-19, and the fact that we're still emerging from lockdown and what have you, has had a great impact upon the way we deliver services. But not only that, it's had a great impact on local priorities. So I would suggest that you review your ward plan, because you may wish to refresh your priorities. In terms of the crowdfunding campaign, I've looked at your ward plan, and I see some of the themes and some of the priorities that you have. It would be really important to agree the themes, and the themes for which that any potential campaigns or proposals that are put forward, it needs to match your ward priorities. And it's really important that all of the themes and the priorities, they're developed in partnership. So there are a number of ways that you can do that potentially. You can either work with the crowdfunder when the crowdfunder has been recruited, or if you are going to look at your ward plan and you're going to look at your priorities, etc., it may be that you have a separate meeting prior to the funding becoming available to look at and agree the themes and priorities to which you would like your community infrastructure levy funding to be allocated to. So hopefully that just gives you a bit of an update on where we are at the present moment in time. I'm quite happy to answer any questions. I'll take a look in the chat box, because I can hear my email pinging at the moment. So there may be some questions. So I'll just pause at that this time.
Thanks very much, Neil. There are no questions or comments in the chat box. I'm really pleased that you've flagged up the issue of refreshing the ward plan, because I think my gut feeling is that it needs a rework following the 12 months we just had with COVID, because that's had significant impacts on us as a city council, us as councillors, what we can do. I'm very excited to say that someone has their hand up. So can I invite, it's Kate Smart. Kate, can you?
Hello.
Good evening, Kate.
I don't have to show my face, do I?
I'd love to see you, but it's entirely up to you. There's no pressure.
I'm bored, Neil. Just trust it.
Kate, be good practice if you introduce yourself, though. So you are. Thank you.
I was just about to. So I'm the bid manager for Harborne Village Bid.
Good to meet you.
So this is all very interesting, and we've looked at Cllr before as a potential funding source for some of the activity, future planning for the High Street. I'm a bit lacking in knowledge about the crowdfunder thing. I mean, I know what crowdfunding is, but
yes,
how does that work? Who are they getting the money from? The community or business, or where's the money coming from?
Okay, so in terms of how the campaign will work, organisations, that be community organisations, other interested parties, once the themes are clear, the organisations will put forward a proposal, and then what happens is that an amount is agreed from the ward as to what the ward is going to invest in the particular programme, and then it's advertised. It's put out there on the platform, and what then can happen is residents, if they so wished to kind of back the project, can contribute funding, local business can contribute, other stakeholders, other interested parties. So it's wide open, really. And it's incredible, because with campaigns that have taken place around the country. It can be anything from developing or refurbishing a building, right the way through to people wanting to set up an environmental project, a small environmental project, within their neighbourhoods. So the scope of potential projects and what have you is really, really wide. And just like when you have different campaigns to raise different charitable monies or what have you for different causes, it's just really open in terms of who invests. But the key thing is the ward will invest an amount of money towards the campaign, which will kick it off, so to speak.
Thank you.
You're
That's your
welcome.
question, Case.
Yeah, I do think so.
Thank you so much. Councillor Fowler wanted to come in, and then we're going to have to move on to the next item, I fear. Thank you, Councillor Fowler.
Thank you, Jayne. Yes, thank you for Neil. We've been talking about this, Neil and I, for best part of the year, I think we have up to now. And yes, I would certainly agree that, as Neil and I did discuss, he's had the copy of the ward forum, and it does need refresh, because we said it is a working document. And I think as well, Neil, when we had the ward forum, we had a separate meeting facilitated by Karen Jayne, which I found very helpful. And I hope that we can do the same with this sort of standalone. So again, we can be around the table, refresh the ward forum and link the CIL to it, and with the crowdfunder. And we can do that, I think, from June, I think you said.
Yes, Councillor Fowler, I think it would make sense that if you're going to refresh your ward plan, it makes sense to have a session to do that. And it would make sense to link your priorities to any potential crowdfunding campaign. So yes, I think that given the fact that at the present moment in time, the procurement process is happening, I think June is a sensible time, just taking into consideration that people may have plans going into July, and we're hoping that the campaign starts in August. So yes, I would agree with that.
Lovely. And I'm hoping either yourself or Karen will consider facilitating that event. Thank you.
Yeah, we will support.
Lovely.
Can I just ask Neil?
Yes.
You flagged up £127,749. When does that money have to be spent by?
Well, fortunately, Councillor, there isn't a time scale on it. So we're very fortunate. But bearing in mind that you've waited a long time to administer it, I'm sure you would want to do that in a timely way. But fortunately, it's not like Section 106. There isn't a time scale on that.
Thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
I don't think there are any further queries, hands up, comments. So Neil, can I thank you very much for joining us this evening?
You're very welcome.
I know it's hard for officers to do things in the evening. I'm sure demands on your time are great. So thank you very much. I think contact details have been put in the chat function. So
I will share my contact details.
Brilliant. Lovely. Well, in that case, can I thank you, and on behalf of the Harborne Ward Forum, and move on to the next item on the agenda, if that's okay.
Yeah, that's absolutely fine, Councillor, and you'll find that it's probably going to be me as well. So I do apologise to everybody. You can't escape me yet.
That's fine. You're very welcome to stay. Okay, item 5 on the agenda is actually me talking about something called the Commonwealth Game Celebration Community Fund, Celebration Communities Fund. For those of you who aren't aware, some £2 million, the council fund, has been made available to help people celebrate the Commonwealth Games. And that money is available to all wards across the city. Grants are available to run initiatives which deliver against 3 key themes. The first theme is getting active, which is about encouraging people to participate in sports and improving health and well-being. A second theme is about ready, steady, fun. I scribbled this down this morning. It's about community projects, and it's making sure that we are games ready in hosting community celebrations and with an emphasis on active citizenship. And a third theme is about celebrating culture, which has a focus on delivering community projects and culturally led activities that encourage intergenerational activity around culture, heritage and health. So 3 themes, but all fairly broad. Now, we know already that Harborne has got an allocation, and across the city there were monies available from just over 22,000 to some £35,000. And the rationale for dividing that money up was on the basis of the number of councillors per ward, and secondly based on something called the indices of deprivation, which basically maps out how many people are living in poverty in the ward. So we have an allocation in Harborne of £28,000, £28,600. That's been confirmed to me this morning by officers, and that money is available now. Now, what we have to do is, as a ward, councillors have to work with local residents, and this is really key, known constituted community groups. Each proposal will need to be aligned with a ward plan and ward priorities. So that links into our earlier conversations. And a proposal has to come to a forum before submission to the city. So Neighbourhood Development Support Unit will verify all the applications and funding. Now, there's a lot going on there and a lot for us to do, in that monies need to be spent over the next 12 months. Neil, do you have anything to add to that? You might have gone.
No, I'm still here, councillor.
Oh, you're still here? Hello.
Yeah, I'm still here. Yeah, the only thing that I would add is that there are going to be some support sessions, and they're going to take place from as soon as next week, Thursday. So what we can do, we can forward the information regarding those to yourselves, to yourself and Councillor Fowler, and also to people whose email addresses that we have as well, because it would be really, really good if you're thinking about applying for the funding to go along to one of the support sessions just to find out more and ways that you may be able to get support if you need it with your applications. But no, I think you've covered everything, Councillor.
Oh, thank you. So would it be possible for an individual to approach us with a particular idea and then go away and recruit some like-minded people and form a group?
Yeah, that actually I've received that question before. So some individuals, some volunteers or what have you, may want to do something particular within their organisations, and there are different levels of funding. So there's up to £1,000, there's up to £5,000, and there's up to £10,000. So there are different levels of funding. The only thing that we will say is that if your project is going to be in the larger bracket, that it makes sense to attach yourselves with a local organisation that's already established, because the organisation will have to make the application. So, just make sure that you've got an anchor or another support organisation if you're an individual or a group of individuals who can make the application or support your application with you.
If I may, Neil, for clarity, can that be a different type of organisation? Can it be a private sector organisation, public, or a third sector?
Yeah, it can be from any sector, right across from voluntary to faith, as you say, as long as it's meeting the ward priorities. Because what will happen in terms of the selection of the projects, it will be down to elected members and stakeholders who attend that selection meeting to decide what you want to support.
Thank you. Neil, there's a question in the chat that I'll take advantage of while you're here. Can you read it? Can Women's Institute make an application?
Absolutely, you can. Yeah, bona fide organisation. Yes, indeed.
Excellent. Go for it, Linda. Thank you. Councillor Fowler's got his hand up again. Councillor Fowler.
Yes, thank you, Neil. The support sessions, firstly, when are they likely to take place, month, etc.? And secondly, that I noticed that again aligns with the ward plan. So I'm thinking we've got the SIL standalone, talk about it, refreshing the plan, and then obviously we need to align. So I'm taking it that the SIL, either you can do the two together, or you do the SIL and then followed by the Celebrating Communities Fund.
Yeah, so what I would suggest, Councillor, I will definitely send the information in regards to the support sessions. I'll try and put them in the chat if I can. If not, we'll send them outside the meeting. Because the Celebrating Communities Fund has been launched and it's live, there are 2 rounds. The first round ends in terms of proposals to be received by the 1st of June. So I would suggest that you focus on celebrating communities. And then obviously SIL and your themed priorities for your ward plan. And then there's going to be a second round of reaching communities, although it's the same pot, but there'll be a second round later on in the autumn that residents and stakeholders and what have you can apply for. So yes, there's a bit of a timetable there of opportunity. I hope that helps.
Thank you. I'd love to talk offline as well about this, and I know that
Thank you,
help where we can with the funding.
Thank you, Councillor Fowler. Anybody else want to ask Neil something before we dispatch him? Okay, I'm not seeing any messages. In that case, very, very huge thanks again for your input, Neil.
You're very welcome, councillors.
Okay.
All the best. Hi, Chair.
Yeah, thank you. Oh, I better put my camera on. Sorry, I forgot to put my camera on. Apologies. Right, we have now swiftly moved on to item 6, which is the local update. The first sub-item on that is West Midlands Police. And I'm very pleased again to welcome this evening Bushra Zaret, who is Representative Police Sergeant of the Harborne Policing Team. Good evening, Bushra.
Hi, good evening, Councillor. Thank you for inviting me.
You're very welcome.
So item 6 is an update from West Midlands Police. So most of you know me, I'm the Sergeant for the Harborne Neighbourhood Policing Team. Just a couple of quick updates really. The police has recently gone through a major IT change in that we've amalgamated 11 systems into one system. So it's been like a major shift around how we record crime and how we track our cases through that system. And so the new system is called Connect, and as I said, it's basically merged 11 of the systems. So a real period of transition for the police and real challenge. And as a result of that, 2 of my longer serving officers have been seconded to that project, supporting officers across the force with that transition to the new systems. So currently I'm operating with myself and 5 student officers. So they're with us till June and are being exposed to the best of neighbourhood policing, so they can gain some experience around neighbourhood issues. So obviously this month saw the reopening of the high street and retail. So I'm pleased to report, I don't want to steal Kate Smart's thunder, but I'm pleased to report that we've had really no major issues on the high street. The reopening was planned for and has gone quite well. My officers did put on some additional patrols, and we linked in with a lot of our licensed premises ready for that reopening. So that's gone well. Obviously, as part of that, we have now restarted our street watch patrols. However, we are still limiting our patrols to 2 people, and obviously an officer, which would potentially make 3. So we're looking to obviously expand that, I think, as and when reopening happens or the things change, we will be looking to increase our patrol sizes. Couple of big pieces of work that I've been currently involved in, and one of that has been looking at a closure order for a quite large HMO property just off the Hagley Road. So that property was served a closure notice earlier last week, I'm in court on Friday, applying for a full closure order in relation to that property, which has been subject of high levels of antisocial behaviour and nuisance. So we're looking to seek a full closure order from the courts, which should, if granted, should remain in place for 3 months. So that is something that's that we're at court with on Friday. And the other big piece of news has been the issue around the car cruising. I know Peter and I have had a couple of meetings in relation to this. Just to update you, we've had a number of warrants executed across the force today in relation to car cruising. One of them was in the Bartley Green area, and officers have successfully recovered a number of number of items linking offenders to that type of activity, and have gleaned quite a lot of intelligence from those warrants. So that was very successful, and that happened this morning. So other than that, really, I think that's pretty much my update at the moment. Does anyone have any questions?
Can I ask, have there been, I know there have been problems with boy racers in Bartley Green and bits of Quinton. Has there been anything pertinent to Harborne?
Yeah, so it kind of comes on to the Harborne area. I think Peter's probably better placed to kind of explain the geography, but there is a section of the West Boulevard that comes on to Harborne.
Yeah.
So it kind of straddles both teams. So we are looking to put that item onto the agenda for the local police delivery group. And one of the things that Peter, myself, Sergeant Mark Short for the Bartley Green Quinton team are looking to develop is an application for a camera. So that piece of work is developing. And I had a meeting, I think, was it last week, with some of the residents that Peter Fowler helped to organise. And we talked about getting some training for my officers from our traffic colleagues, so we can kind of look at how we as a neighbourhood respond to those emerging issues.
That's really interesting, thank you. I'm not seeing any further questions or comments in the chat box. So can I thank you? Oh, there is a hand here. Matthew, do you want to put your question in the chat box?
In the chat box, or
did you want to say something?
Is it an issue? I can raise an issue about policing.
Yeah, Matthew, that's fine if you wanted to ask a question.
So this is about the slip road on the Metchley Lane, which leads into the Queen Elizabeth Hospital, and there's traffic signs there which allow only for buses and emergency vehicles, and it was around a year ago, before the last lockdown, that the sort of local police team were able to do an enforcement day. Since then, obviously, we've had a number of lockdowns, and now we're starting to come out of that. It's becoming a particular issue again with the general public using that, and then sort of causing a lot of traffic congestion in that. Is that something that can be looked at? Do you have any sort of capacity, your team or sort of neighbouring Edgbaston team, to sort of consider that?
Is that the no entry sign, or the limited entry? Is that the one you're talking about?
It is, yes.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I can ask, my officers are on tomorrow. They're on an early shift tomorrow, so I can ask one of them to pop down and have a look and see what the issues are at that location.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you very, very much, Bushra, for Sergeant Zari, for joining us again this evening. I'm sure that people know how to contact you via counsellors, or indeed directly if they've got any other pertinent issues. So thank you very much.
No problem. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next contribution is from Kate Smart, who is going to give us a brief update on the bid, Birmingham Business Improvement District. Apologies, Kate. I thought you'd left earlier. I was misreading the chat box.
I'm here to end, Jane. I've got stamina me.
Right, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I've got to show my face this time, be polite. It's been, well, as everyone can imagine, it's been an absolutely tricky time recently. So the bid probably hasn't seemed all that visible, but we've been working furiously behind the scenes to support the businesses, supporting businesses with getting their various grants. It's been very complicated with all these things that have kept coming out from the government and no one quite knowing what's happening until finally the council gets told what money they've got to dish out and how. So that's been difficult, but we're getting there, and I think all our businesses now have received the grants or are about to receive some new restart grants, which will be very helpful for them. Obviously the reopening of non-essential business on the 12th of April, as Sergeant Zarifa said, went very smoothly. We've had a couple of issues reported, just I think impatient customers in one of the pubs, which hasn't been helpful and is causing quite a lot of stress to the landlords, but it's being managed. So all I can say is, and I'm sure it's nobody on this meeting, but please be kind. They're under a lot of stress. If you want your pint, just hold on a minute. Then also so a big part now for the bid, as we said about with the ward plan, is that we've had to kind of reassess our business plan, and it's all focused on COVID recovery now for our businesses, because they've had such a shock and a hit with all the closures. So we're doing various different things. We're doing a Harborne Springs Back campaign, which you'll see bits of, which is just about the businesses coming back and welcoming customers back and just ensuring people are still keeping safe. Obviously, we've got the reopening of hospitality indoors. So some of our businesses have been able to open and serve in gardens, others haven't. So it's a really big day for the High Street on the 17th of May, because we'll pretty much all be back to normal by then. So make sure you start booking those tables indoors. We've got planned for this weekend. So here's a sneak preview. We have bought 10 picnic tables, because a lot of businesses can't serve inside, and because a lot of customers are still very nervous about being indoors in restaurants and things. We're putting 10 picnic tables out on the wide forecourt opposite the old schoolyard, thanks to the very kind owners of that land. You may not be aware that's privately owned land from Sainsbury's up to Joe Richards. And we're putting some tables out there solely for the use of customers who have bought food or drink from some of our businesses, so they can sit outside and meet socially, but at a safe distance. So the plan is that those will go in on Friday. I'm under great pressure to get that done, but we thought it'd be nice to have them in for the bank holiday weekend. So nothing too glamorous like other parts of the city due to funds, etc., and us not having appropriate pavement spaces, but that's our sort of best effort to try and support our hospitality businesses. And that support to hospitality is vital, so I'd really urge everyone to do what they can to support those businesses, because they've had so much enforced closure. And also, just to give you a sneak bit of information as well, we're planning a nice big outdoor high street event in September, hopefully, all being well. On a Sunday in early September, we're going to have a Harborne village fete. So it could be a bit of an old traditional fete, just bringing people together safely, obviously. But that's all part of our recovery from COVID and supporting our businesses. In fact, the businesses don't even know about that particularly yet. So, and I think that's it from me. If anyone's got any questions, do let me know.
Thank you very much, Kate. That's really helpful. Good update. I'm not seeing any hands raised. Any questions? I'm really pleased that things are going so well on the High Street, because it's been an awful year just for so many businesses. So I'm really pleased that we've got you on the ground supporting and getting information out to. We've also worked really hard, and Kate has worked really hard. I can testify to this, about keeping the High Street as clean as possible, and making sure that bins are emptied and that graffiti is removed. It's been an ongoing thing, hasn't it? So our High Street is a very valuable part of who we are and what we are in Harborne. So we want to keep it looking as clean as possible. Okay.
I was just going to just quickly,
of course,
on the graffiti thing, if anyone spots any graffiti in the main High Street area, I'm currently working from home, so I'm not always on the High Street, but if you spot any, please feel free. I'll put my email address in the chat. Please feel free to let me know. I've been known to go out myself with graffiti removal wipes, and cleaned the phone box by Joe Richards recently because I was so annoyed. So please let me know, because sometimes we just need more eyes on the street to report stuff. Thank you.
Thanks, Kate. We've also had some graffiti last week and the week before in bus shelters. It was sort of anti-COVID vax graffiti, so we managed to get that removed fairly quickly as well. So it's really important that we keep on top of those things. So thank you very much for everything that you're doing. Okay, unless there are any more questions or comments to Kate as bid manager, we'll say thank you very much to her. And the next item is for ward councillors. Any update? Councillor Fowler, did you want to make a contribution to this section?
Firstly, just I tried to get into Kate because I know that from the past, Kate, and I can't remember what it was. It was like a wheelbarrow type thing where there was cleaning brooms and things, etc. And is the graffiti things there so we can collect and try and use those things on graffiti? But I am conscious as well that, speaking to one of the officers at the council last year or the year before, there has to be, or recommended, there is some training on removing graffiti on particular signs, because I've known from my own experience that if you're not sure what materials to use, the paint can bleed, and I've seen signs be destroyed by cleaning off graffiti because you weren't aware that what you were using actually would make the paint bleed into another colour.
So to answer about where the kits are,
Yep.
we have got that wheelbarrow that was given by the council, and that is currently stored at McPherson's on Clarence Road, and that's got brooms and bags and bag holding hoops and things like that, so, and litter pickers. But I've got 2 first aid kits and I've got 2 graffiti kits, and I've kept those in my office because of the chemicals. I thought they would be best kept in my office, and my office is above Britain Opticians, but anyone who thinks they'd like to use them, I think they have got instructions as to how to use them. Then just email me, because don't just walk into Britain Opticians and ask for it, because I don't imagine they'll know what on earth you're talking about. But yes, there are 2 kits, and the wipes are amazing, but even with vinyl gloves, makes your hands pong for days. So it's strong stuff.
Okay. Any more from you, Councillor Fowler?
Yes, just on the lines of graffiti. Yes, we're calling for a massive sign clean up the city. It's completely coated with graffiti, especially from these tag artists. Lupica is certainly one guy, and Snape, I see an awful lot of them. Yeah, it's a target of trying to get that clean up as much as we can. And likewise with fly tipping, that is still a regular thing, and I'm sure Jayne's doing exactly what I'm doing. As we see fly tipping, we're reporting it and getting it cleaned up. And we did actually get a camera put up on Minton Road, is that on the Welsh House Farm Estate, because that was getting an amazing amount of fly tipping. But thankfully with that camera, it's now stopped. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Yeah, I think as Councillor Fowler said, we do seem to have had, particularly as the sun has started coming out, a significant increase in a number of things. Certainly the increase, I'll share with you, the increase in antisocial behaviour across the city has been worrying, a 40% increase in the past 6 months. And that's included in our ward of Harborne as well. I've had a number of quite complicated pieces of casework. The theory is that people have been, home-based for a long time, and people are less relaxed about what their neighbours are doing, and things are very easily flared up. We have to say that all of us have to say, if anybody is feeling particularly under threat, physically or in any sort of danger, they have to report that to the police. But we try and put in a series of support mechanisms for people who are experiencing antisocial behaviour. Peter has rightly identified an issue with fly tipping. and litter. It's all over the place. It drives me nuts. Locally to where I live in Harborne, there are a number of ad hoc groups that seem to have formed. I saw a couple of pensioners out this morning by the Green, going from the sheltered housing project there. Everybody's doing their bit. I've got children who are doing things as well. And it seems to be, I don't know whether it's going to decrease, but certainly in the past couple of months, the issue has been there's been nowhere for people to go and socialise with friends, nowhere for people to go and have their cup of coffee or their sandwich. And they don't take their rubbish home. So we can't get bins emptied fast enough. And it's an ongoing problem, and it costs the city a hell of a lot of money to keep cleaning up. And I'm very, very clear, if we find out who the perpetrators are anywhere in the ward, we will prosecute. Make no bones about that. Okay, that's my gripe for this evening. We've got half an hour left of this meeting. Are there any particular residence issues that residents who've joined the meeting tonight want to raise? Goodness me. Okay. Absolutely nothing at all, because there's not another meeting for 3 months. Well, I'm neither seeing or hearing anything. So perhaps we could all have supper at a decent time.
Incidentally, Chair, whilst people are possibly still thinking about what they can ask, looking ahead to the next ward forum, I mean, it would be in October, but I think we need to talk with Neil, because Neil was saying maybe we could have one in probably June, because maybe people would not want to have one in July because of holidays.
Normally, Councillor Cllr, it's August where we don't have meetings. So I was working on the assumption that we would have something 3 months' time, so towards the end of July.
That's what I'm saying, Chair. It'd be interesting to hear what people are saying because of the COVID and lockdown. It'd be interesting to know from people if it's something they're quite happy to have in July. I'm certainly happy with that.
My guess would be that in July that we will still be having virtual meetings, but certainly for gatherings such as this. So I think, given what we might want to go away and perhaps think about an interim meeting in May to discuss the various funding opportunities, and then come together as a ward forum towards the end of July, so we can sort of connect everything up.
Yeah, that was a question. We were talking whether we did it at the end of June or end of July.
Yeah. Okay. We'll note. Sorry, we'll note that. Okay. Kate Smart has her hand up, so please ask your question, Kate.
Sorry, typically me, but
okay.
Just on the matter of a rewrite or revised ward plan, I would just request that this is done as soon as possible, just because last time it took a very long time, to put it nicely, and I just know that these things drag on, and I'm scared that we won't have a sort of firm enough ward plan that we can then use, because everything seems to link back to the ward plan. So, I mean, can it be sent out as soon as possible?
Okay, so I think what we'll do after this meeting is try and get some at least a date in our diaries for some initial conversation about and a sort of timetable for going forward with these different things. Gina Powers wants to say something.
Hello. Yeah, it's Mick actually. I've come down to join us. Just a couple of things with regards to, firstly, the barriers on the high street. Are they envisaged to be in place for some time to enable people to walk at a distance?
Sorry. Yes. I don't know who I'm speaking to, but your name is coming up as Gina Powers, but I think I know.
Yeah, it's me.
That's okay. Yeah, our understanding is that they're going to be there for until at least the autumn. And I suppose I take the view as somebody who walks up and down the high street quite a lot that they're actually needed still. particularly as more and more people are coming out.
Yeah, well, I'm a carer for somebody who's in a wheelchair.
Yeah.
And particularly outside Pizza Express and a couple of other food chains stop. The barriers are moved by these delivery scooters, and I have to keep moving them back. Is there any way that they could be made more substantial, as in concrete of any description, or is that a health and safety issue?
Or more water in, or sand?
Because I mean, I've spoken to a couple of these scooter people, and all you get off them is abuse. That's if they can talk English.
And Marie Brown knows about it.
Yeah,
it's still not stopping the problem.
And then the other way,
wanted to can I just bring Kate in again, because
yeah, well,
there have been some issues, and I think part of the conversation has been with business owners, because there has to be access to businesses for loading and unloading. But
they put them back, but they don't.
I know it's an issue. We will take that on board. Kate, did you want to come in again?
Yeah, I just wanted to reassure you really that, reassure you sort of, that it's an absolute nightmare. It's something that drives me mad every time I'm in Harborne. They are never straight. It's not quite as bad in other areas of the city. I've brought it up with the council numerous times. They are maintained. So those barriers are hired in by Birmingham City Council as part of some European funding for COVID. And there is a company contracted who are supposed to maintain them, look after them, put them straight. And I don't really feel they're doing their job. So, so what I can do from my point of view is I can contact the officer responsible for that contract and have a little nag. And we did get, I don't know if you noticed, we got them straightened and cleaned up before the shops opened on the 12th of April, which was great, but they were soon wonky again. So I will also, I think, write a letter to all the businesses that have a frontage with a barrier and explain the issue of delivery drivers, but also people like yourselves who have accessibility issues, because it's not on. So yeah, but we may look at long-term, more permanent widening of the pavements.
I mean, just on a point of interest there, with regards to a charity shop next door, but one or something to the Harborne stores, they piled their rubbish up in there on the Friday evening and left it there all weekend, about 10 bags.
Yeah, so you couldn't get
right in front of the ramp.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll speak to them.
Yeah, my other second gripe was, who do you contact with regards to the misuse of these electric scooters, the ones that the Void company are supplying?
Okay, what do you mean by misuse?
Well, I've seen them in a 40-mile-an-hour zone. I've seen them with 2 and 3 people on. They're flung in the middle of paths and left anywhere.
Driving on the
driving on paths. They're just generally being used.
Coming out the pub on them.
Right.
Wobbling all over the road, holding the traffic up. I mean, who do you report all this to?
There is they're not necessarily a permanent feature of our lives. Harborne was selected as one of the pilot areas, and I think there's some evidence that it's been quite successful. However, I do know that there have been abuses as well, because residents have contacted me. So I think sometimes there's a question of interpretation as to the legality of what you're supposed to do with them, what you're allowed to do. I realised that I was walking down the high street one day last week, and it's in the middle of the afternoon, and I saw a man speeding down the high street with a car just on his handlebars. And I took it as a double take.
I mean, I have spoken to somebody. She's anti the scooters. I mean, I know Mr. Street's all for it. Now, apparently, initially in Birmingham, they had 200 scooters, and they had to remove 150 because they issued ABSOs about them being abused. ASBOs.
I do know there's an issue, because I've been contacted by residents who are either blind or partially sighted. Because what happens when the power stops is that they just out on a pavement. I mean, I've had them right outside my house, and I think other residents have as well.
Good enough. Okay, thank you.
We will do what we can. It's important that you feed back to us your experience of it, and we will note that. Linda wanted to come in, I think, and then Councillor Fowler.
Hi, Jane. It's Linda.
Hi, Linda.
Just with a question from your other participant there about the e-scooters. I've had a chat with the manager for VOI for Birmingham, and he's really helpful. And there's quite a lot on the website about reporting misuse. And if you can get the identification number and registration number, they will follow it up. They've got a unique number on them, if you're able to catch that.
Thank you.
Thanks for that.
Thanks, Linda. Councillor Fowler?
They're not whizzing too fast.
Yes, maybe just to add on that, and thank you for that. I have to say that e-scooters are a bit marmite at the moment, but it is, as Jane said, it is a pilot in Harborne, and we do actually meet with VOI usually on a monthly basis, and then we are bringing any issues or any problems, and then left down to VOI. Then we'll take it on board and do their best to address these issues. So thank you for that, and I will mention it when we next talk with VOI. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor. And it's also important to remember that it's a pilot programme, and the project will be thoroughly evaluated, and those things will be taken into account. Okay. Any more resident issues? Speak now or forever hold your peace.
Sounds like an early dinner.
Okay, I'm not seeing any hands or reading anything. So what I was thinking, what I've been thinking over the past few minutes is that it's quite an odd time at the moment. We're in Purda. We've got mayoral elections and other elections coming up at the beginning of May. We've also got a couple of bank holidays, so we have to give very careful thought as to when we can meet and what we can achieve over the next couple of months. And I think we are going to continue to rely on doing things virtually, but we have proved over the past 12 months that can be done. So I'm very sure that good things will happen. So can I thank you all for your contributions this evening. It's been an interesting meeting. We will get dates of future meetings to you as soon as possible. And in the meantime, you know where everybody is in terms of contacts for any help or support we can give you across the board. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night, Bushra.
Thank you.